Okay, before anyone says anything, yes, this story just escalated again. And no, it's not because Brooklyn Beckham dropped a video on Instagram or handed a clip to TMZ. It's more unsettling than that, because now, for the first time, people are openly asking whether footage from his wedding exists that backs up his most explosive claim. And that question alone could change how this entire family feud is understood forever. For years, the Beckham family drama existed in that familiar celebrity limbo, where everyone senses something is wrong, but nobody can quite prove it. There were awkward absences, strange unfollows, missing milestones, and carefully staged public appearances that felt just a little too polished. Enough smoke to suggest fire, but never enough proof to say it out loud. Until Brooklyn spoke. And when he finally did, he didn't give a vague interview. He didn't release a soft statement through a publicist. He posted a long, raw message in his own words, accusing his parents, David Beckham and Victoria Beckham, of years of control, press manipulation, and prioritizing brand image over family relationships. But buried inside that statement was one moment that instantly stood out, not just because it was shocking, but because of how specific it was: the wedding. Brooklyn claimed that during what was supposed to be his romantic first dance with his wife, Nicola Peltz Beckham, his mother stepped in and danced on him in a way he described as inappropriate, humiliating, and deeply uncomfortable, in front of hundreds of guests. At the time, many people brushed it off. They said it sounded exaggerated, emotional, dramatic, almost too bizarre to be true. And to be fair, when you're talking about one of the most famous families in the world, skepticism is natural. But then something happened that shifted the entire conversation. Someone who was actually there spoke up. Not a source, not a tabloid insider, not a friend of the family, a wedding guest. And not just any guest, someone directly connected to the music, the timeline, the room itself. A DJ associated with the wedding posted content online that directly referenced Victoria dancing during Brooklyn's first dance. It was framed casually, even jokingly, but the implication was clear enough that people immediately noticed. Screenshots started circulating, comment sections exploded, and then the DJ's partner publicly commented that he was there, that he witnessed it, and that Brooklyn was telling the truth. That comment was later deleted, but by then, it didn't matter. Because once someone who says, "I was there," enters the narrative, the story stops being just a family dispute and starts becoming an evidence problem. And this is where the footage speculation comes in. Not because we've seen it, but because now it's logical to ask whether it exists. Weddings like this aren't undocumented. There are professional videographers, photographers, private reels, behind-the-scenes clips, security footage, and personal phone videos floating around among guests. This wasn't a small ceremony in someone's backyard. This was a global celebrity event. So when people hear a guest say they were there and back up Brooklyn's account, the next question becomes unavoidable. If someone was there, was something recorded? And if something was recorded, who has it? And if someone has it, why hasn't it surfaced? That question alone is what makes this moment different from everything that came before. Now here's where things get even messier, because Brooklyn's version of events directly contradicts the official wedding coverage that came out in 2022. Major publications described the first dance as romantic, uninterrupted, exactly as planned. They claimed the mother-son dance happened much later in the evening and was framed as a sweet family moment. Two completely different stories about the same night. And this is where you have to understand how celebrity narratives work. Wedding coverage is not journalism in the traditional sense. It's curated, approved, sanitized. It exists to present a specific version of events that aligns with brand image, relationships, and long-term reputation. Anything awkward, uncomfortable, or emotionally messy does not make it into the glossy write-up. So when Brooklyn says something happened that wasn't reflected in that coverage, that doesn't automatically mean he's lying. It means there may be a difference between what was experienced and what was presented. And when a guest supports his version, even partially, that gap suddenly feels a lot more real. Now let's address the title head on, because this is important. Did Brooklyn Beckham literally leak wedding footage? No, there is no confirmed video released by him. But did his statement create the conditions where footage suddenly becomes relevant, dangerous, and potentially explosive? Absolutely. Before Brooklyn spoke, no one cared whether footage existed. Now, everyone does. And in situations like this, sometimes the most powerful move isn't releasing a video. It's letting people wonder whether one exists at all, because that uncertainty puts pressure on everyone else. Brooklyn didn't just accuse his parents of one uncomfortable moment. He accused them of a pattern. He claimed they pressured him to sign away rights to his own name before the wedding, affecting not just him, but his wife and future children. He said family members told him Nicola wasn't real family. He claimed his siblings were encouraged to turn on him online before cutting contact. He described being rejected when he tried to see his father privately, unless it was at a large, public event filled with cameras. And then there's the part that hits differently the more you sit with it. Brooklyn said that for the first time in his life, after stepping away from his family, his anxiety disappeared. That line reframes everything. This isn't a man trying to win a public argument. This is someone explaining why he no longer wants reconciliation, because from his perspective, peace only came with distance. Now, critics immediately jump to the same conclusion they always do in stories like this. They said he's being influenced, that the language doesn't sound like him, that this must be coming from Nicola, that he's been pulled away from his family. Brooklyn directly addressed that too. He said the narrative that his wife controls him is completely backwards, that he was controlled long before she came into his life. Whether you believe that or not, what's impossible to ignore is how consistent his framing is. Image, control, press, obligation, anxiety, relief. Those themes repeat again and again. And meanwhile, his parents have said nothing. No denial, no clarification, no emotional response, just silence. In celebrity culture, silence isn't neutral. It's strategic, it's legal, it's cautious, especially when specifics are involved. Because once you start responding to detailed allegations, you invite scrutiny, you invite receipts, you invite follow-up questions. And if footage exists, even footage that simply shows a moment differently than the official story, that's not something you want dragged into public discourse. Which brings us back to the wedding dance. Not because it's the most important allegation, but because it's the most visual. It's the one thing that could theoretically be proven or disproven. It's the one thing that could exist on camera. And that's why it's become symbolic of everything else. The tragedy here isn't who danced with who. It's that a moment meant to be sacred has become a piece of evidence in a public trial. A memory that should have been joyful is now being dissected for truth value. And once family memories become public exhibits, there is no easy way back. So the real question now isn't whether footage will leak. It's whether this family is already past the point of repair. Because time doesn't pause for family feuds. Parents age, siblings drift, moments pass, and absence, eventually, stops being a statement and becomes permanent reality. What makes this situation genuinely unsettling isn't the allegation itself. Celebrity weddings are messy, emotions run high, alcohol flows, boundaries blur. That part isn't shocking. What is shocking is timing. Brooklyn didn't speak in 2022. He didn't speak in 2023. He didn't speak in 2024, when the rumors were loudest. He waited until 2026. That alone tells you this wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't a reaction to one headline or one bad week. This was a decision that took years to reach. And when someone waits that long before going public, it usually means one of two things. Either they've exhausted every private option, or something shifted behind the scenes that made silence impossible. And this is where the footage speculation becomes more than gossip. It becomes context. Because in celebrity families, especially families that function as global brands, power doesn't come from who's right. It comes from who controls the narrative. And for most of Brooklyn's life, that narrative has never belonged to him. It belonged to David Beckham, whose reputation is built on discipline, respectability, and national pride. It belonged to Victoria Beckham, whose career depends on precision, control, and an immaculately managed image. Brooklyn grew up inside that ecosystem. Every appearance, every smile, every family moment served a purpose. And when you grow up in that environment, you learn very early that memories aren't just memories, they're assets. That's why the wedding matters so much. Not because of what allegedly happened on the dance floor, but because weddings are supposed to be the one moment where the brand steps back and the human takes over. Brooklyn is essentially saying that never happened. And if he's right, then the wedding wasn't just emotionally painful, it was symbolic. It was the moment he realized there would never be a private version of his life that didn't belong to the machine. Now think about this from another angle. Why would a wedding guest speak up now? People who attend events like this sign NDAs, formal or informal. They're part of a social ecosystem where staying quiet is currency. You don't burn bridges with the Beckhams unless you're prepared for consequences. So when someone connected to the wedding casually says, "I was there," and backs up Brooklyn's claim, that isn't bravery, it's exhaustion. It suggests that whatever loyalty once existed has eroded. And that usually happens when people sense the story is about to move on without them, or when they realize silence is starting to feel like complicity. Brooklyn says he's found peace. His parents remain silent. The public keeps watching. And somewhere out there, Footage may or may not exist, but the damage already does. So I'll ask you this. If you were in his position, and the happiest day of your life was still a source of anxiety years later, would you protect the image or protect your peace? Let me know what you think. Anyway, this concludes today's video. Be sure to subscribe to LoafTube for future celebrity videos, and turn on that post notification bell so you don't miss out on any future uploads. Until then, see you in the next one.